All right, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of The Spark Show. This is episode 3, United We Stand. So on this episode, I had released a preview of what we were going to be discussing on this episode today, and what that was going to be was America First versus pro-Israel topics, and it's something that's dividing the Republican Party right now. Ever since Charlie had passed away, we had a pretty unified approach to what Israel is, what it means to Christianity, what it means to Americans, and how far do we support Israel as an ally. So basically, the major conversation starters that we're going to have on the episode today are going to be, where do we stand on Israel? Are we America first? Are we pro-Israel? Can both coexist? Or are we being forced to choose? Because there's a lot of that feels like we're being ushered into making a decision when it feels that maybe, just maybe, we can hold both truths at the same time. Most of all, my biggest question is Israel, the Holy Land, still worth defending? For as long as time can tell, Israel has served biblical, interests, served as a biblical highlight for the Middle East. It serves as, let's see here, basically, its biblical significance was that, the chosen people and covenants, God selected Israel and the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be his treasured possessions and a holy nation. And God made several unconditional covenants with them, including the promise of a specific land, Canaan, and the assurance that all nations on earth would be blessed through Abraham's seed, which Christians understand as Jesus. For me, growing up as a Catholic, I was heavily invested in the medieval crusades for Jerusalem. Obviously, like, I always thought that Christians should, protect the Holy Land. I always thought it was a cause worth fighting over. If you've never been to Israel, if you're not really invested in your faith, well, I can give you 100% to the core reason why we should protect Israel as Christians, and it is because Israel is the Holy Land. There is no way around that. It is the land where Jesus was born, Jesus lived and did his ministries, and where he died and was resurrected. And so those are all very prominent pieces of the biblical stories that represent Christianity, Judaism, even some forms of Islam are represented in these stories. And it even goes to show that some of the most important religious sites in Israel are protected by all three religious factions, not factions, but they're protected by basically every religion is represented in the protection of the holy sites. Muslims, Christians, Jew, everybody. And so I think through the medieval crusades, when we were all fighting over Jerusalem, it was finally came after so much mutual destruction that we should all be the gatekeepers of these holy sites. And so moving into today, as Christians, we should definitely invest our resources into protecting the Holy Land. That's something that if you doubt the Bible, if you think that the Bible is just stories made up by these people, and there's really no foundation to this, then you need to visit Israel and you need to walk the actual ground where Jesus was born, where he conducted his ministries, and then also visit the site of his resurrection, because there is nothing that can bring you closer to God than actually walking on the same ground and visiting the same sites where he lived his life, came down in human flesh form, lived as Christ, and was a perfect human, and died on the cross for our sins so that we could have eternal salvation. And if you're having a hard time digesting that, then visiting these holy sites can definitely bring you closer and close the gap on that doubt you might have in your mind to actually really becoming invested in your religion, in your faith. And so for me, I start with my investment as a Christian, as a Catholic. I want to protect the Holy Land, and I think that's worth always standing up for Israel. I've always grown up with, sympathy and empathy towards Israel and Jewish people as a whole, because I grew up on all of the, period films that were diving into World War II, the Holocaust, and, Nazi Germany and the terrors that occurred during that time. And for me, I'm very invested in, never seeing something like that come to fruition ever again. And the only way that I believe we can truly stand against something so terrible is to put our faith first. And if we act with God at the primary, center of our interest, then there's really nothing that we can't overcome and nothing that we can't fight back on. And one of the, main things why we're having such a big divide in the GOP right now over Israel is because we started with, our Trump agenda in the MAGA movement, which was, we want to make sure that we're representing the interests of the United States first, and that the American citizens are being taken care of before we start sending billions of dollars to foreign nations. Yes, they may be our allies, but that does not mean that we should be sending taxpayer dollars to fund the actions of a government who we don't feel like we're freely able to scrutinize. And quite frankly, here in the United States, we're more freely to scrutinize the American government without any recourse than we are the Israeli government. It seems that if you are to critique the Israeli government, that you are labeled as an anti-Semite, which that is not 100% true at all. We need to maintain critical thinking and a separation of our religious perspectives versus the actions of a government. So when I say that we need to maintain allegiance and, not allegiance, I'm sorry, we don't need to maintain allegiance to Israel, but we do need to maintain our relationship as allies. Being an ally doesn't mean that you support every decision that the government is making. Being allies doesn't mean that you're an anti-Semite just because you speak out against the government of your allies. Just because your nation is represented by a different religion than that of another country does not mean that we can't freely scrutinize the actions of that government. Christians and Jewish people both have a similar interest in Israel because no matter which way you look at it, Israel provides a religious foundation for almost every religion in the world today. Not only is it geographically a strategic position, which allows, us to enter into the East, but it also is a way for, it's a way for us to exercise, democratic operations within that region. It's a strategic stronghold amongst Muslim nations, amongst Jewish nation, amongst Christian nations. Everyone's represented. It's even, right there on the borders of Asia. And basically, this is the transition point, Israel, into basically the East and the West. So this is why Israel has always been such a big focus, because it has such a huge geopolitical implications depending on the direction it goes. Basically, we want Israel to stay in control, of what it has currently. But the big debate is, should Israel occupy the West Bank? Who knows? It's hard to say. I was having this discussion with a close friend of mine, and we were talking about, what if, Israel were to take over the West Bank or were to occupy it and pull just a complete Russia maneuver and as a superpower just completely just take it over. And my friend brought to light to me, you have to know the geopolitical regions and what is going on over there and why these moves aren't happening and why just a thought in your mind might not properly represent how these countries can operate. Yeah, it might sound like, we're getting tired of all the conflict over in the Middle East. And yeah, as Americans, that could be a very easy perspective to sit on because we do not have the threat or fear of rockets flying overhead in our cities or states, in fear that one of those rockets may land in a hospital or, land at a music festival. That's not something that we live under the threat of here in the United States. Of course, we've had 9/11 occurred and we had planes flying into the World Trade Center. That was about as bad as it gets in American history as a domestic attack on U.S. soil. It's hard to speak and give an opinion on how somebody should conduct their military operations when you have no idea what it's like to live in their shoes. So it's hard for me to just say, oh, we just need to completely, wipe out the West Bank. No, there's innocent people there, and it doesn't matter, if it's Hamas or if it's the Palestinians. There are innocent lives there that need to be accounted for, and if you were to try to go and commit a genocide on the Palestinian people or do that against Hamas, you may think that the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, could go ahead and make that happen. Sure, they are a very they're a great strength in the Middle East, absolutely, and their weapons technology is advanced beyond comprehension in comparison to some of their bordering or neighboring countries. And so if Israel were to make any big moves like that, well, there would be massive implications from other Muslim countries like Turkey, who would step in and they would go all out war to protect their fellow Muslims. And so, it leaves us in a bit of a predicament. I think that, American interests always should come first as Americans. And you could be a Jewish American, you can be a Muslim American, you could be a Christian American, you could be a Buddhist American. It doesn't matter, but you should always have respect that America has a foundation of Christianity. That is where we all need to realize that, we need to have respect for Christianity in the United States. And if you're a person who thinks that we're going to shift the United States from ever being a Christian nation to some other, form of religion being the primary religion, then you're out of your mind. If you want to turn the United States into, Great Britain, or if you want to turn the United States into France, where Muslims are overtaking these predominantly Christian nations, well, there you go. If you want to be arrested for Facebook posts speaking out against or critiquing certain religions and the way that they're acting within the four walls of your nation, go ahead and move in that direction. But only with Christianity and God at the forefront of all that we do are we able to defend the core values of the United States, because in our conception, we were developed on Christian principles, the Bible, and quite frankly, just like Charlie would say, 55 out of the 56 founders of the Constitution were Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. And out of the 13 colonies, each state had basically, oh my gosh, what do we got here? 13 colonies. They had basically a 13. So generally, all 13 colonies required public office holders to attest to a religious belief, most often specifically Protestant Christianity. But you take this back to the core. I mean, you could even look at the Federalist Papers, which go into length about the fears of democracy, and then also getting away from the core principles of Christianity as well. And I think here, so I wanted to also add in that, what was it? Massachusetts. Right. Okay. So, 12 out of the 13 colonies required a declaration of faith to operate or work in the state government, and with the exception of the one, which I believe was, it looks like Massachusetts. They were predominantly, let's see, I think it was Catholicism that was predominantly in Massachusetts. So that was the only one aside from the rest that required the oath to work in office. Yeah, they required a pledge of Christianity, mostly for public office. And you know, so we're a nation founded off Christian principles. We're an outgrowth of common law, which is also an outgrowth of the scriptures. And if we're going to deny that and try to allow opposition parties in the United States to usher in a new religious dominant or faith of some sort, I mean, we're just in big trouble. But moving back to the America First agenda, I'm not going to ever be America First to the point where I'm anti-Semitic or I denounce, people of different faiths or anything like that. I fully believe in our Constitution to protect all religions, to protect free speech, to protect our Second Amendment rights, and most importantly, it's to protect our God-given rights. And putting America first doesn't mean that, we're not for helping others. That's completely wrong. It just means that we need help at home first. We need to take care of ourselves before we lose ourselves and we're incapable of being the big brother. For as long as we can tell, I mean, it seemed like maybe from World War I until now, America was seen as a world superpower. And over the years, we've slowly been losing a little bit of that each year. And that is due to some of the social and cultural shifts that we've seen in the United States. And that includes some of this like pro-Israel, America First, really nasty anti-Semitic rhetoric. And that's not something that I'm going to engage in. I'm not going to engage in that sort of rhetoric because I don't believe in anti-Semitism in any regard. I really do believe that being America First means that putting the interests of America first before that of, immigrants or, that of other nations. America truly has to be thought of first. Our citizens, the taxpayers who fork up the bill, and that voted for the representatives that hold office. And if we're not being represented properly or accordingly, and it's a consensus among the people who put the administration in office, well, people are going to look for different avenues to scratch at. And, I think that's what in this America First versus pro-Israel cause, I mean, it's become so ridiculous because we don't really even need to have this conversation. Being pro-Israel and America First, those two things can completely coexist. And there's no reason to force anybody to choose. Forcing somebody to choose is what's creating the anti-Semitism. Forcing somebody to say, I'm America First, but you can't be pro-Israel if you're America First. And you can't be pro-Israel if you're not, America First either. It's just, how do we hold these truths at the same time, but still explain to people that we can have interests in all areas. We can have interests as America, coming first as American citizens, as I would expect any other nation of citizens to I would expect them that they would have their government put them before anyone else. And scary examples of those things falling apart, like I said earlier, is going to be like, the UK in its current condition. We're going to see the same thing in France. This is all policies where laxed immigration laws have allowed mass migration of religious groups and extremists to enter countries. And it's given the culturally indigenous populations a run for their money because they are in real time watching their countries that they grew up on lose their heritage. And if you want to preserve the heritage of your nation, then you need to stand for the principles and the core values in the religious principles that your nation was founded on. And for Americans, Christianity is what brought us to where we are today. I'm not going to say that all of the things that Christianity has done in order to get us here today have been all beautiful, lovely, peaceful things. That's just not true. But what I can say is through all of the horrors that we've had to fight through to get where we are today, we have ended up in a relatively and very peaceful state. And so to be in a country where we're able to coexist with other religions and set an example for the world that we can coexist in peace, I think that we need to continue on in that direction. We can completely be America first. We can completely be pro-Israel. However, that does not mean we need to 100% support Israel, their government. We do not need to abandon America first policies because we support Israel. We can still maintain America first, but also support the interests of Israel as well. And last but not least, we do not need to choose factions. We do not need to choose to be either pro-Israel or America first. Those two things, for as long as Israel and the United States have been allies, have coexisted. Can we expect that our leaders will maybe stand up to government officials in Israel when we don't agree with how they're handling their military operations? Sure. Why not? We should be able to freely express our frustrations or our discontent with the murder of innocent lives, or, not agreeing with, some of the calls that Benjamin Netanyahu has made over the time. We can disagree that him holding office because they've been in a state of war, maybe isn't in the best interest of Israel. But quite frankly, I'm not an Israeli citizen. And I don't expect me to have the full, transparent perspective on what Israel wants, because that's not me. I'm not a citizen of Israel. But at the very least, when it comes to Israel, I know we are allies, and I know that being allies with someone does not always mean that you need to act in your ally's interest. But what it does mean is that you have mutual interests, and when those mutual interests exist, that you're allies so that you can both mutually benefit from those resources or scenarios or things like that. But a good ally, too, is going to stand firm in their resolve when they see something wrong, because America has been known as the big brother, the world superpower that sets the stage for the world. And it is our responsibility to let other governments and nations know, when we see something, we say something, and that's okay. It's difficult to say, should we be in the Middle East? Obviously, I think that America needs to have some interest in the Middle East. We need to have troops there. We need to be supporting our allies in the Middle East. It is an extremely hostile, territorial place. We're still seeing religious wars break out like we were seeing in medieval times. And until we can get stability in that region, to where we can bring the entire Middle East into the modern era of peace, which means no more rockets flying, over borders, no more random terror attacks, no more just aggressive wars that don't need to happen. We just really can coexist in peace. But where there is power to be gained, there's always going to be corruption. And this is going to always be the predominant theme in good versus evil. And so as Americans, too, we need to maintain and preserve and have faith, when we're up against these extremely, extremely evils throughout the world, we need to maintain our resolve in our faith and with God. Due to the biblical and historical significance of Israel, we really need to maintain a love for Israel, a love for the people of Israel. They are our brothers and sisters there. All around the world, we have brothers and sisters in faith, but, when it comes down to national loyalty versus moral responsibility, there are some, options and things that need to be weighed when it boils down, especially to war or acts of war. I don't have all the answers to that. I can only react to what exactly is going on. But I do think that we can maintain a level of skepticism towards the government of Israel, but we can also maintain a devout love for the biblical and historical significance of Israel, because I do think that at the core that is really important. I think a lot of Christians in the United States would actually benefit from visiting Israel and seeing these holy sites. There's quite some significant things that I think if you saw with your own eyes that you may just come home feeling a new connection to God. Because I personally have not been to Israel, but I've been, to Spain, which is where I have family, and I visited some of these, holy sites in Spain. I mean, there's the Monasterio de Montserrat, and that's one of the most holy monasteries in Spain. I've been to La Sagrada Familia, and that is another cathedral that is just a fantastic, iconic, holy site. It's a religious site in Spain, in Barcelona, that was built. I can't recall the time frame, but I mean, it is just a historic relic. And these are the things that take you back in time. They walk you back through, all of these different time periods back until the conception of religion. And if you're curious, or maybe you're still struggling in your faith, these are things that you should look into, to go and explore, to dive into, your religion. I mean, visiting sites in Israel like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and the Sea of Galilee provides tangible connections to the history recorded in the scriptures. And so when people just say those are made up stories, I'm sorry. If you go and you visit the landmarks, you walk the same path that Jesus walked, you see some of these same landmarks that are mentioned in the Bible, you begin to realize, wow, these were real lived stories, and they have historical significance. And at the end of the day, because there was a real starting point for religion, and these stories were not just made up or, cast out there out of, folklore. It's a great starting point or place to reignite your faith. Basically, Christ is king, and we should always put him at the forefront of all the things that we're doing. And when it boils down to America first, pro-Israel, my final thoughts on that is I am America first. I'm an American citizen. I am also pro-Israel, but I am always going to maintain skepticism of Israel's government. Same with the American government. I don't think that we should ever, as citizens, ever blindly follow our government, officials, elected leaders. I think we should always question them, be skeptical of their actions, and like I said earlier, if we see something that we don't like, we say something. And if we are all loud enough to the point that we can bring that to the attention of our leaders, then we're doing it the right way. We're doing our jobs. But as far as what unity is going to look like, moving forward in the world, well, I think that Americans, especially, conservative Americans, are going to have to realize that Israel is a prominent force in the Middle East. They are our ally there for a reason. They are also another, military superpower in the region. Some of their weapons technology is advanced beyond the other nations there in that region. They have access, to the Red Sea and to other regions that allow them to participate in world trade and free markets. And so I think that we're going to have to overwhelmingly just, if there's any of these factions that think you have to choose, well, we're going to have to rewind this, guys. We're not going to build up momentum where, one extreme end of the party thinks that we have to abandon, an ally, someone who's been there for the United States. And, I don't think that we're never going to abandon Israel. We're not. We're a Christian nation. We love Israel. We love the people there. We have mutual religious commitments to the land of Israel. And I think for as far as we can see into the future, the relationship that we currently have needs to stay the way it is. And just like I said, it's not about, defending the government of Israel, but we are always going to defend the nation of Israel. Charlie was a big proponent of that. Just as I said today, that if you haven't had an opportunity to go to Israel, to walk in some of those historic, places where Jesus conducted his ministries, where he was born, these are just significant pieces of history and pieces of religion. And if you're interested in furthering, flushing out ideas on religion or figuring out, this is the way that you want to go do your soul searching. Israel is going to provide a lot more than just, an ally in the Middle East. They really do have a lot more culturally to offer, especially from the religious perspectives. And I think we need to have tremendous amount of respect for the Israeli people and maintain that while we don't want to necessarily be a part of some of the actions that we maybe don't see eye to eye on with Israel's government, that as Christian nation, we're always going to defend the nation of Israel, because we will never let the holiest sites of Christianity and Judaism ever be corrupted or destroyed. I think that that would really cripple the core of some of our foundations. And most importantly, I think that we really need to always maintain that as Americans, we're going to unify and work together. And because if we cut off our allies in the Middle East, then, we're no longer united. And those allies, those strategic partnerships that we have may perish and could lead us into peril. And so all I want to leave off on is that we can hold both truths at the same time, and we should always give it to God. If we don't know, we should give it to Him, and never go all in and put your eggs in one basket. Don't follow just somebody because they're saying something extreme or, this and that, but we always need to put our faith first. Respect the nation of Israel, but also have a deep respect for ourselves here, and always maintain our core values, which are going to be, at the end of the day, Christianity and principles erected from the Ten Commandments. And so if we're all struggling and we're all feeling unhappy, I think like one thing that we could do for everybody to feel a lot better as a whole and to sort of mend the brokenness of our nation is to probably get people to go to church again. I think that just being within community, reigniting faith is going to be the best thing for future generations, just as far as where we sit right now. I think the reason that we're seeing a lot of America First extremism And what I mean by that is basically abandoning Israel because we think that potentially they're coercing or they have leverage on the United States. I don't agree with that. I think that we need to put our faith first, and we need to believe in God, and we need to know that through Him we are, that's how we became the powerful United States of America, and we need to maintain that prerogative. And we need to stay in that direction, and we also need to give kids hope for the future. And I think hope starts with, faith in Christ. And so, with that, I just want to say thank you for everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've taken anything away from this episode today, I hope that's that you can hold two truths at once, and that you aren't ever forced in a political party in the United States to have to take an extreme position in any regard. I think that the most based and rational positions are going to be ones where we hold two truths at once, and we work to see these things through in a way that we compromise and we see our resolve through peace. And that's about it. And so thank you, everybody, for watching. God bless you all. God bless you, Charlie. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Spark Show.